Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Matt down here in the catacombs, and actually quite happy to be down here. Rob, are you following what's going on in the news lately?
I've been out of touch, but you caught me up.
I'll tell you what, I think it's a good place to be down here in the catacombs. Things are really, really spinning out of control. Cardinal Dolan, everyone's talking about Cardinal Dolan right now because he has, well, he's going to be the marshal for the St. Patrick's Day Parade in New York City. Now, personally, the St. Patrick's Day Parade seems to me to have gone off the Catholic rails some time ago.
A little bit.
But everyone's talking about the fact that he is now, he's going to continue to be the Grand Marshal of the parade, despite the fact that a homosexual group is officially going to be recognized as one of the, I guess you call them floats in the parade. So he, as of today, September 17th, he's issued a statement, Cardinal Dolan has, called "Explaining My Decision to Serve as Grand Marshal," and it's appeared on the New York Archdiocese website. Now, he makes a bunch of points, Rob, but this one, well, actually, there are three that I think are worth commenting on. First of all, he says, quote, Cardinal Dolan says, "I haven't been in this much trouble since I made a comment that San Musial, my boyhood hero of my boyhood hometown St. Louis Cardinals, was a much better ball player than Joe DiMaggio." I can't believe that he's managed to work in another baseball reference. The world is crashing down all around us. ISIS is hacking up, American citizens now, beheading them. We're losing our children. And now there's this massive scandal in New York City. And Cardinal Dolan decides he's going to make another little baseball joke. Your Eminence, please, enough with the baseball. It's not working. Every time I see this man, he's guffawing with laughter, or he's talking about a baseball thing.
Heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I guess. It's that time of year. I don't know how the Yankees are doing, but he's making a baseball reference, hearkening back to when he used to, in Wisconsin, with the cheese head miter. Anyway, he makes the baseball reference, which I think is important to helping us understand what is going on with this man. And then he goes on to the point, and I'm going to quote him here. He says, "The committees," he's talking about the parade committee, the St. Patrick's Day Parade Committee's decision, "allows a group to publicize its identity, not to promote actions contrary to the values of the church that are such as an essential part of Irish culture. I have been assured that the new group marching is not promoting an agenda contrary to Catholic teaching, but simply identifying themselves as gay people of Irish ancestry." End quote.
Nice.
Can he possibly be being serious? The name of this homosexual group, Your Eminence, is out at NBC Universal. Now, what does His Eminence think they're promoting? Green beer?
What does that have to do with St. Patrick?
Exactly. What does that have to do with St. Patrick's? The New York St. Patrick's Day Parade was founded to honor, guess who? St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. It is the oldest Catholic parade in America and the largest Catholic parade in the world. And now something called Out at NBC Universal is officially recognized, which is not enough for Cardinal Dolan to separate himself from this event. That's one of the points I thought was interesting. Next point, he says, quote, "In fact," now this is where he actually praises the leaders of the organizers of the parade for their decision to go ahead and allow this group in because it's helping the Catholic Church. So he says. He says, quote, "In fact, the leaders of the parade committee tried to be admirably sensitive to church teaching. They worried that the former policy was being interpreted as bias, exclusion, and discrimination against a group in our city, which, Rob, if true, would also be contrary to church teaching. While they were quick to acknowledge that in reality the policy was not unfair at all, they were also realistic in worrying that the public perception was the opposite, no matter how often they tried to explain its coherence and fairness, and I found their sensitivity wise and publicly said so." End quote. So the Cardinal Archbishop of New York, as I'm reading him here, seems to be saying that to ban gay activists, homosexual activists, from the parade would be contrary to church teaching. To ban them would be contrary to church teaching.
I can't do this. Yeah.
I can't either. I can't do it anymore. I'm so tired of the whole thing, I can't even handle it. Here's what a friend of mine writes in an email, which I think is worth quoting. He says, "So, the premier Cardinal Archbishop of the U.S. is going to dress up as the Grand Marshal of a parade that just changed its rules to allow an unrepentant group of those who habitually commit mortal sin to carry a banner advertising that that very sin is what defines them as individuals. And this, taking place at St. Patrick's Day Parade, is somehow not offensive to Catholic Church teaching, according to Cardinal Dolan." Okay, so moving right along, if you think that Cardinal Dolan is the problem, if you think that he's a renegade, I don't believe that's the truth. I think there are many bishops and archbishops around the world, even cardinals around the world, who would support his decision. I was just in Pittsburgh this past weekend for the Catholic Identity Conference, which was a huge success. And there, Bishop David Zubik, who has been spending the last couple of years encouraging his faithful to join in with Franklin Graham's I don't know what they call it, the Praise-a-thon or whatever. It was a 3-day event in Pittsburgh in which there were altar calls, in which Protestant ministers gave absolution to sinners and so forth from the stage. Bishop Zubik played a part in this event. He was on the stage, refusing to make the sign of the cross, of course. He blessed everybody there and everything else. And then a few days later, he comes out, because the Society of St. Pius X has just acquired a new church in Pittsburgh. His chancellery office comes out and says, let's make sure we stay away from the Society of St. Pius X's new church, because why? Because they're separated from the Catholic Church.
Yeah, those Protestants.
Right. Franklin Graham evidently is not separated from the Catholic Church, at least not enough for a bishop. Anyway, so that's what Bishop Zubik has been up to lately. And I think the connection is that as of today, we just received this notice: Cardinal Timothy Dolan to be honored at the 2015 Bishop's Dinner. This is on the website in Pittsburgh. And here's what it says. On May 15, 2015, we hope that you will join Bishop David Zubik and Catholic Charities as we extend a warm Pittsburgh welcome to Cardinal Timothy Dolan, Archbishop of the Diocese of New York, at the 33rd Annual Bishop's Dinner for Catholic Charities. During the gala, Cardinal Dolan will be presented with the Cardinal Donald W. Wuerl Flame of Hope Award for his leadership as a tireless advocate and defender of the faith, religious freedom, and the right to life. Now, this is after Cardinal Dolan has made this huge scandal by refusing to separate himself from the St. Patrick's Day Parade. He's being invited by his brother bishop down in Pittsburgh. So we can see that there's a pattern. The exceptions are hard to find to those who are willing to go this sort of Dolan-esque route with respect to one of the 4 sins that cries to heaven for vengeance. But now, don't misunderstand me. These men are doing what they're supposed to do. Rob, they're doing what their boss is expecting of them. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So to criticize the Archbishop of New York for doing essentially what the Archbishop or what the Bishop of Rome has endorsed seems to me to be a violation of Christian charity. You simply cannot criticize Dolan for doing and saying things which are being, from all I can tell, endorsed and approved from on high. So we remember back in July, Pope Francis suggested that he would not even judge priests who were involved in this sort of activity, whose sexual orientation was this way. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. He was aboard his airplane on the way back from Brazil when he gave his famous quote to secular journalists, which he said, quote, "If someone is gay and he searches for the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge?" Now, Francis was speaking again to secular journalists. He's speaking in Italian, and he uses the English word gay for that comment. It's now so famous that it's been made into t-shirts, and the gay community is running around with pictures of t-shirts with pictures of Pope Francis on the front and "Who am I to judge?" emblazoned across the top. Now, Francis, his words, of course, as we all know, could not possibly deviate any more from those of Benedict XVI, who in 2005 wrote that homosexuality was, and this is essentially the last time in living memory that the Catholic Church has spoken out against this sin. Benedict XVI, 2005, homosexuality is a, quote, "strong tendency ordered towards an intrinsic moral evil and an objective disorder, and that men with deep-seated homosexual tendencies cannot become priests." This is from Benedict XVI. Now, don't we see what's going on here? Any churchman who follows the traditional teaching, as defended most recently by Pope Benedict XVI, can expect to be ecclesiastically beheaded, which makes all of us wonder why it is exactly that Pope Benedict XVI abdicated. Why is he no more? Since he has left, there has been a concerted effort to undo everything he tried to do, from the motu proprio, Summorum Pontificum, restoring sanity to the liturgy, and now even to the moral questions such as homosexuality. Which brings us to Raymond Cardinal Burke, one of the most tradition-minded bishops in the Catholic Church today. He used to become now, evidently, what the kids call Malted Knights. He's to become one of the Malted Knights. Now, I remember when I was at the conclave before Francis was elected, the standout cardinal in all of the Eternal City was definitely Raymond Cardinal Burke. I mean, we have video of him, I think we played from down here in the catacombs, where every single time that I saw him as part of the press corps, he had the omnipresent rosary going, the black fedora, the black overcoat, and he was going across the piazza praying the rosary. He was one of the few that seemed to understand the gravity of the situation as opposed to others, including Cardinal Dolan, who made the outrageous comment before he went into the Sistine Chapel with the other cardinals that he was going to bring in some candy bars in case he got hungry. I mean, that was the level of discourse that Cardinal Dolan brought to the conclave. Now, His Eminence, Cardinal Burke's particular talents now, apparently, according to a very, very substantiated rumor, these talents are needed to head up the Knights of Malta, which, of course, is an honorary position normally reserved to, retired cardinals and folks like that, which, if it happens, and at this point, it's still a rumor, but if it happens, means that Cardinal Raymond Burke will have zero influence on church governance going forward. Now, the question is, why Cardinal Burke? Why has Cardinal Burke met the Franciscan sort of chopping block here just days before the Synod on the Family is to kick off? Well, he will be at the Synod, but why is this news coming out now? I believe it is because Cardinal Burke, the old rad trad, is still making judgments. And the modern Catholic Church is not in the business any longer of making judgments. There was a very recent interview of Cardinal Burke in which the host of that interview, Thomas McKenna of Catholic Action Insight, questioned Cardinal Burke about the instances where people must actually make judgments in light of Pope Francis's famous "Who am I to judge" statement. Cardinal Burke's response, and I'll just read it. We have to judge acts. We have to. And this is the voice of Mother Church, Rob. I love this. Cardinal Burke. We have to judge acts. We have to. All day long we make judgments with regards to certain acts. This is what the natural law is, to choose good and to avoid evil. I have great compassion for those with same-sex attraction, but that compassion means that I want them to know the truth, to avoid sinful acts for the sake of their own good, for their own salvation, and so you try to help people like this. Now that, says Cardinal Burke, today isn't well received by an aggressive homosexual agenda, but that doesn't mean that it is not the right approach to take. Cardinal Burke warned that should we remain silent due to pressure from the aggressive homosexual agenda, we would be, quote, presiding over the destruction of society, end quote. The destruction of society. And now the impending demotion of Cardinal Burke to as Sandro Magister, who's he's one of the most quoted journalists in the world, Sandro Magister. And he says this promotion not to, quote, the prestigious See of Chicago, but rather to the pompous but ecclesiastically very modest title of Cardinal Patron of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. In other words, Cardinal Burke is done. He's finished. It's over, if this happened. This must be all about bad translations, or maybe it's just mean-spirited traditionalist spin. Maybe we should consult with Jimmy Akin to find out what are those 10 things that we all must know for why the demotion of Cardinal Burke is in fact a promotion that's going to lead to the salvation of the church in modern times. What are these neo-Catholic friends of ours going to say now? Cardinal Burke is too traditionally minded Catholic, too Catholic for the present administration of the Holy Catholic Church. Now, I don't have the answer. I don't know why admonishing the sinner is no longer one of the spiritual works of mercy, at least as far as high-ranking churchmen, even so far as the Pope himself are concerned. Who am I to judge? I don't have the answer. But because I don't have the answer doesn't mean that I can't ask the questions. What in the world is going on in the church? Again, Sandro Magister, one of the most quoted journalists in the world today, in his opening paragraph, breaking this story about Cardinal Burke being demoted, talks of a revolution. Sandro Magister says, quote, "The revolution of Pope Francis in ecclesiastical government is not losing its driving thrust. And so, as happens in every self-respecting revolution, the heads continue to roll for churchmen seen as deserving this metaphorical guillotine," end quote. And he goes from there. It's no secret to anyone in Rome that something very dramatic is happening to the Catholic Church, that Pope Benedict abdicated for a reason and for reasons which are still unclear but very, very suspect. Antonio Socci, another not traditionalist Catholic, but very powerful and prominent journalist in Italy on the order of a Pat Buchanan, just a few days ago, wrote the following about what is happening in Rome right now. Quote, "Today, in the Bergoglian epoch, there is a return precisely to Karl Rahner and to that philosophy which has already caused such damage among the Jesuits and in the Catholic Church. And in this empty abyss, Catholics are tossed and turned by every wind of doctrine, subjugated by any ideology, and corrupted by any heresy. A great darkness surrounds Rome," end quote. Now, if Sandro Magister can make this admission, if Antonio Socci can make this admission, it's obvious that the whole world is becoming aware of the fact that we are waking up to a nightmare. And the radically anti-Catholic media love Pope Francis. The liberals everywhere can't say enough about Pope Francis. Why is this the case? What does this tell you? Rob, you see what I'm saying? I mean, if the media love this man, if Nancy Pelosi and every liberal wacko can't say enough about him, it should say something to our neo-Catholic friends about the situation that we find ourselves in. Let's wake up to what's happening. Let's pray for the Pope, pray for what's happening to the church, and try as best we can to raise some sort of concerted protest against what is happening, because the Vatican is still susceptible to the pressures of the court of public opinion. If we can wake our neo-Catholic friends up to the reality that we must, as one, forget about what separates traditionalists from neo-Catholic, we must, as one, stand and protest, especially now as the Synod of the Family kicks off in a few days. We must stand up and object, as Cardinal Burke has done, and he's now paid the price for it. Pray for the Pope, and may God help us all.